Hi, I'm Lauren Rivers, and today I'm going to be reviewing Huntress by Renee Carter Hall. I'm going to read the back jacket really quickly just because it summarizes it far better than I think I could. All her life, the young lioness Leia has dreamed of becoming one of the Karanja, the proud huntresses of her people. But there's more to being a Karanja than just learning to throw a spear. Life among their tents means giving up family, safety, even love. How much is Leia willing to sacrifice for a place in this sisterhood? Does she truly have the heart of a huntress? I'd say that, I'd originally purchased this book at Texas Furry Fiesta, I think, and, I was looking for something to read, not like I really needed a bunch of other things to read at that particular point, but I remembered when it had first been published, and it kind of caught my attention a little bit, but, at the time I hadn't really thought that it was going to be my kind of story, and, I couldn't really tell you why I bought it in the first place, but, I bought this, and I think one or two other things, I think both two works by Tempe Okun at the same convention, and when I actually started reading it, I have to say I was very impressed with the overall piece, because it's a novella that was originally published in something else, I think, and it also comes along with three short stories that are set in the same world that kind of expands the characters and some of the things that you encounter when you read the main story. It's described as a coming-of-age anthropomorphic fantasy for teens and adults, and it basically tells the story of Leia, who is a lioness in some version of Africa, who basically sees these women that are huntresses that pursue the big game, and they live apart from the rest of the tribe. They have certain aspects that she finds interesting, and she really just kind of it's kind of like when you see your idol when you're really young and that's what you want to be. And that's basically what the Karanja are for her. And, when she's young, she sees them, and it kind of forms this indelible imprint on her that is going to affect her through the rest of the story while she tries to find her place in the world, which, is a tried and true narrative that really works well here. And I have to say that I really enjoyed the story. I mean, there was just so much about it that I found interesting. But don't take my word for it. I mean, definitely check it out on your own. And a couple of things that I might say about it is that it sucks you in a lot more than you think it's going to, and it really does a very good job of crafting this version of Africa that kind of really just pulls you in, like it's like you're if you close your eyes you can almost see it in front of you, and that's really definitely the sign of a well-written piece. I'd read another book by Renee Carter Hall that was by Sword and Star that I also liked a great deal, and that was also similarly good. I had done a written review for that one. I don't know if I'll have time to do another video review, but as far as the book is concerned, there's a really strong cast of female characters, which of course appealed to me, as well as being just a great job of having the characters interact with each other and setting up the story really well, and it was just a fantastic piece all around. At this point, I'm going to start talking about the plot, so if you don't want any spoilers, now would be the time to click away. Okay, so the story starts with Leia's desire to be a Karanja, that she wants to hunt the large prey because you're not allowed to kill the larger creatures without being one of these huntresses. And her mother doesn't want her to follow this path, although we're not told at the time why that is. But she's kind of become interested in their way of life, and she's never wanted anything else. So this causes a little bit of friction between their characters because her mother just kind of wants her to do what most of the other women in the village do and get married and have kids. and the author does a really good job of portraying a crush who's completely oblivious to the fact that they're an object of desire, which is obvious to just about everybody else, and it's played to absolutely fantastic effect in dialogue. There's so many funny lines about how she just doesn't realize that her childhood friend Bahati just totally digs her, and she just doesn't get it, and she keeps thinking that I mean, I guess it's like a lot of the well-written characters where everybody can see it except for the people involved. Like she thinks that it had to be, I mean, she says, everybody would love the crap out of you, and for whatever reason, this girl that you like, she doesn't get it. So I mean, how can she be so stupid, completely missing the point that he's talking about her? So she goes on an initiation and is accepted by Masaka, the leader of the Hunters, and goes off to join the Karanja. And at first she just kind of, I guess you could call it almost like a little bit of a hazing ritual. She gets tasked with all the tedious, boring jobs while everybody else just kind of sits around, and she starts regretting her decision to become one of them. And, finally she just says, I've had enough, this is ridiculous. And once she does that, they reveal that that's what they were waiting for all along, that you were going to stand up for yourself. And from that point on, her greatest tormentor, Thembe, becomes one of her strongest friends. And as they start training her on how to actually become a huntress, they she tells her about the rules for interacting with the villagers, about how they can be with somebody, but usually just only once, because if you do it multiple times, you're that much more likely to get pregnant, and that's something the Karanja aren't supposed to do. She goes on a hunt and finds a crafted bead that she knows can only come from one person, her childhood friend Bahati. And when she meets up with him, he confesses that he has feelings for her, and they kind of don't really know what to do with that at that point. Now she also goes and has her first real hunt, and afterwards she meets Nuru. She has her first romantic experience with another male who is somebody, kind of, I guess she's thinking of Bahati a lot of the time, but this is the first time she's actually had a relationship with somebody that is outside of her village. So it's kind of a new experience for her, and the first hunt really doesn't go that well. As I'm looking at my notes, I'm recalling that the first hunt kind of really actually went horribly bad, and she kind of actually just runs off just to try and find somebody to just talk to, because she knows that Masaka and that Thembe saw the disastrous first hunt, and of course what she doesn't realize at the time is that this is okay, we expect you to screw up the first time, but it takes her a little bit before she comes to that realization. And after she goes on her second hunt, she comes back to her home village and sees her mother. She's her mother doesn't really seem that interested in interacting with her, and she starts to feel a little bit of isolation. And during the second hunt, Thembe is injured seriously, and her death kind of results in a little bit of a depression for Leia. And after this goes on for weeks, or however long it happened to be, Masaka finally decides, it's like, I need to do something about this. So she sends Leia on a walkabout and just tells her, go wander the world until you find what you're looking for. And while she's out traveling, she meets a couple of characters, Nadiri, who's a painted dog, and Shani, a jackal, and she finds them kind of a little bit of a quirky pair. And they also have a younger character living with them named Matoto, and she just kind of ends up, I guess, becoming adopted by these characters. At first she's a little bit rough around the edges, but she starts fitting in with these characters as they start to just sort of, I guess, take her in and begin the process of healing. And I mean, I kind of remember something in the story now about, people that end up at Nadiri and Shani's hut. It's like they don't really know why they're there at the time, but they know that they need healing. And this is usually one of those things that Nadiri and Shani just kind of do. And, Leia starts fitting in with the group as she spends more time with these characters. And, Shani is... Shani likes to do like a lot of sculpture and clay, and when she asks her how she does her work, Shani tells her the clay it tells me what it wants to be, which kind of reminds me a lot about how I work and why I sometimes have large work stoppages, because it's just kind of like I have to wait until it speaks to me, and sometimes it's not always on clockwork like I'd like it to be, but Leia observes Shani and Nadiri. As she observes them, they go to a local village, and they heals a bunch of the locals. And she learns a little bit more about Matoto and how he ended up with these two women. And basically, it kind of it gets explored in one of the short stories. But to put it succinctly, he was deemed as cursed or undesired, or that he was a portent of something negative, and they were going to just leave him to die. And Nadiri just she couldn't let that happen, so she adopted him, and in doing so was expelled from her village. So that was kind of one of those. It really speaks to like the love between these two characters, because you can totally understand that. I mean, it would be hard for most people that have any kind of heart to be in that kind of scenario and leave that kid behind. And Shani kind of befriends Leia, and she makes her a clay elephant figure, and she tells her that her spear is sad, because it's not being used. And finally, when Leia receives this gift, she goes back on the hunt for the first time since Thembe's death. She tells one of the stories of the elephant, but this time she changes the ending, and she starts to forgive herself, realizing that Thembe's death was not her fault, that it wasn't her that. She's holding this responsibility for something that she had no control over. And it was, a really nice payoff for that part of the story, because, particularly, I mean, I enjoyed Thembe's character a lot. Just, it was so surprising when all of a sudden she dies, and then you get to see like the real cycle of depression and how all this stuff, how the mourning and things progress until finally, she starts realizing that, these things happen, that this is not something that I caused, and that I shouldn't feel guilty for something that happened that I really couldn't have made a difference for. It's not something that, she did purposely or brought about or anything. It just happened. And, she ends up seeing Bahati again in his new village, and they start to talk again and have a reunion, and they finally decide that what she's looking for she has right here with him, and they decide to become something new. From her experiences with Nadiri and Shani, Leia learns healing, and she forms a group called the Nadiri in honor of her friend, with the title of Masaka in honor of the Karanjala, the leader of the Karanja. So, she honors both of her friends and finds her identity in these things that they've taught her. And it kind of points out that sometimes you don't always fit in one mold or the other. Sometimes you take a little bit of everything, and it helps form who you are and informs who you're going to be. And this was really the perfect way to end this story. I'm going to talk very briefly about all of the three short stories. So, the first short story was called Shape of the Sky, which is a story about Matoto, the young boy that was living with Nadiri and Shani. And, it's set years after Nadiri and Shani's death. And, he meets this girl who has a feral antelope named Dagoma. And the animal is injured, and he figures out that it's pregnant. So he kind of just pretty much does what his I don't know what to call them other than the people who raised him. He does what they did, and sort of gives this Masozi a little bit of healing. And when she finally figures out that missing piece, she performs a fire dance in gratitude, and tells why she left her home, which was again kind of a little bit like Leia's story. Not something she did on purpose, but it was just something that happened. And as a result, everybody just didn't want anything to do with her anymore. And then she leaves, having been better off or encountered him. The second short story is called Star Beast, and Leia is telling a story to the Nadiri children, the tribe that she formed. And to put it in a quick summary, basically the moral of this particular little short story is be careful what you wish for, because the character kind of doesn't want this creature that they can never catch. And they're told, if we do this for you, you're not ever going to be able to get it back. Are you sure? And they say yes. And then they find that they were, they miss it. So it's kind of a point to the fact that you always need something to chase. I'm reminded of something that I saw or heard once that was kind of like, may you achieve all your dreams except one. So you always have something to shoot for. And I really kind of think that's important for people in general. It's like we always need something to reach for, even if it's something we can never achieve. We need something to cause us to move forward, to make us get out of bed in the morning. And that's kind of what I took from Star Beast. And the last short story was called Where the Rivers Meet, which sort of tells Nadiri's backstory, which when she was young, she was deemed the voice of the gods because if your parents died early, this was a symbol that you were special or something. And she meets Ajobu and tells him the story of Davu the hunter, who is one of their folklore characters. And she sort of becomes friends with him a little bit. And she goes and learns the healing arts, and she goes to heal a character named Thabo, and has kind of a vision of a bird that sort of, I don't know, I guess it influences her a little bit. And what is this about? What does this mean about me? And when she tells a different version of the same story, or one of the Davu stories to I forget what relationship exactly it was, but maternal relationships to Wema, this character that she was living with. Maybe, obviously, not her mother because her parents died early, but Wema, who I think is her teacher or trainer. I could be wrong about that. She disapproves, saying there are new stories, and Ajobu gives her a white feather. And she kind of keeps this with her because it reminds her a little bit of the story of the bird. And he asks her, because he kind of sort of talks like, you're a witch, you can pretty much do anything. So, he asks for Thabo to. Well, she asked for basically for Nadiri to get Thabo to take him as an apprentice. and she says something to Thaba which convinces him to do that, and he kind of sort of just has this. I don't think he really believes that she's a witch, but she kind of plays around and says that you can make things happen, and after Ajabu has become Thaba's apprentice and gets his shot at what he wants to do with his life, Nadiri has her first period, and it's kind of funny how it's played out, because she kind of thinks that she's dying, because and I can understand, I have never had a period, of course, but they have this place where they take you, and she has dreams that further give her questions about herself, and her first period just it's kind of funny, because I could tell what it was, even though it wasn't explicitly stated, but you could kind of tell when Wemma comes back to pick her up, that she asks if she's going to die, and you're bleeding from places you really don't want to bleed from, but she learns about what this means, and Jabu goes and gets married, and Nadiri treats a hunter for a snake bite, and when Wemma dies, Nadiri takes her place as the healer, and she becomes aware of Matoto's situation, that he is, that for whatever reason, that he's considered undesirable, that he's a bad portent, and that they're gonna leave him behind and just leave him to die, because it's like it's a bad omen for their tribe. So she treats Ajabu for his injured ribs, makes peace with their relationship, and ultimately she leaves with Matoto, because she can't just abandon him there, even though she really has no particular obligation to do anything, but obviously she picks the moral course, and basically raises him, because it's kind of one of those things that I can see. It's like there's nothing wrong with him, but for some reason just because of this, that they think that he's going to be something negative, that they just are willing to just abandon him and just leave him for whatever happens kind of impression. But that's the short stories, and I just want to say that the books were really good, that I liked the novella and all three of the short stories, and if you've watched this far, I wholeheartedly recommend that you give this book a read. So thanks for bearing with me, and I'll see you on my next review. Thanks for watching, and if you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. You can also find me on Twitter and a few other places on the web, or support me via Patreon or Ko-fi. Zebra hugs!